Welcome. My name is Samia Chasi, and I am your facilitator for this learning bite on power dynamics and partnerships, which is part of the Responsible Global Academics Partnerships training offered by UNIPID and its global network partners. As a point of departure, I would like to note that power dynamics in partnerships can be challenging. This is particularly true of partnerships between institutions in the global north and their counterparts in the global south. The current partnerships paradigm seems to be based on northern domination and southern dependency. And partnerships are often characterized as extractive relationships that tend to disproportionately benefit the north. So the objective of this learning bite is twofold. Firstly, I'd like to address power dynamics by focusing on two issues that are pertinent in that regard: identity and privilege. And we'll look at this in the context of our own personal lives as well as our institutions. Secondly, I invite you to reflect critically on your own partnerships practice. Ultimately, the aim of all this is to help us gain a deeper understanding of power imbalances, how they manifest in partnerships, and what we can do to bring about positive change. So let's start by looking at identity. In equality, diversity, and inclusion training, an important first step is to better understand one's own identity. I'm drawing today on an EDI training course I attended in 2020, which was facilitated by the Cohesion Collective, a specialized EDI training, assessment, and advisory firm based in Johannesburg, South Africa. A number of markers or dimensions of identity are typically addressed in this context, as indicated here on the slide. When we talk about our identities, we often refer to our race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religious and political beliefs, marital status, parental status, immigration status, as well as our age, education, physical and mental ability, the income that we earn, the occupation we have, the language we speak, and where we are geographically located. The dots here indicate that this is not an exhaustive list, but it is quite comprehensive and will allow us to illustrate the complexities of our own identity. So I'd like you to take a moment now to reflect on your identity in relation to these markers. And if you want, please feel free to note them down on a piece of paper. Have you heard of the concept of privilege plug points? The idea behind this is that there are certain identity dimensions that are more powerful than others. They are aligned to dominant views, perspectives, norms, standards, and practices. As indicated here on my slide, some of these dominant dimensions are white, straight, male, able-bodied, Christian, English-speaking, upper income. What does this mean? If you have these identity markers, if you tick these boxes, you are privileged. You fit right in. The world is made for you. But if you don't tick these boxes, then you might be oppressed, marginalized, disempowered. You have to work harder or even struggle sometimes to fit in. The example here speaks specifically to the South African society, but it will most likely resonate with many of your contexts as well. The idea of a plug suggests that the moment you plug into these dimensions, you draw power from them. It's like putting a plug into the wall socket. It's immediate, it's automatic, and you don't have to earn it. You are privileged, whether you know it or not, and whether you like it or not. For further self-reflection on this issue, I'll now invite you to do an exercise that is called the power flower exercise. You need a piece of paper and a pen. And what I would like you to do first is to draw a flower on your piece of paper with two sets of 3 to 5 petals each, one smaller set and one bigger set, as per my example on the slide. And when you are done, please feel free to write down your name in the middle of it. And what I would like you to do next is to note in the bigger petals the privileged identity dimensions that you have. And in the smaller petals, oppressed identity dimensions. So I give you an example, going back to the privileged plug points that I just discussed. If you are a white man, those two dimensions would belong in the bigger petals, in the privileged identity dimensions. If you're a Black woman, those two dimensions belong to the oppressed identity dimensions, and you can note them down in the smaller petals. Once you have finished that, consider this. Was this an easy exercise for you? Do you have more privileged identity markers than oppressed ones? Or is it the other way around? How does that all make you feel? If you would like to take this exercise one step further, you can change some of the petals around. For example, if you are a white man and both of these are privileged identity dimensions, change them into Black woman. And now reflect on this for a moment and imagine what your life would have been like or would be like if you were that person. The final concept that I would like to talk about is the privilege skill set. This can be used as a tool to address issues of privilege and to deal with it responsibly. It has three main components. The first one is to own your privilege. That, of course, entails that you understand your privilege and that you are aware of not only the present realities, but also of histories, especially histories of colonialism, discrimination, and exclusion. And that, of course, is particularly important when you reflect on your own identity in relation to others. The second component is to check in with your privilege. Privilege can be context specific, it can change over time, so it's important to check in every once in a while to see where you're at. And the third component of this privilege skill set is to repurpose your privilege. So whenever you have it, use it for the better. Try to find ways to extend its benefits to others. At this point now, I would like us to move away from our personal identity and consider institutional identity dimensions. If you had to describe the identity of your institution, which markers would you use? Take a moment and note them down. What are the institutional identity dimensions of your institution? These are some examples of markers that you might have used to describe your institution. Its type. For example, in South Africa, we distinguish between research-intensive universities, comprehensive universities, universities of technology, etc. Its geographic location. This could be important not only in the global north and global south context, but even within a country. In South Africa, for example, there's quite a big difference between institutions that are located in urban areas and those in rural areas. Then language again. What is the language of instruction and communication at your institution? What resources does your institution have? Particularly here, we're talking about grants, endowments, but also facilities and infrastructure, etc. Where does your university rank in terms of the global rankings? How international is your institution? And again, here, the dots indicate that this is not an exhaustive list. So take a moment to see if these are the markers that you had in mind, if you maybe have others, and note them down in terms of how you would comprehensively describe the identity of your institution. Now let us go back to the issue of privileged identities. In a previous workshop, a participant indicated that he represents a European, highly ranked, well-endowed, and international university. And he noted that this institution operates from a position of privilege. Do you agree? If so, how can the privilege skill set that I spoke about recently be applied in this context? Further reflections that you might want to make in regard to your own institution is to go back to the power flower exercise and say, what are the privileged and what are the oppressed identity dimensions of your institution? Does your institution plug into privilege? If yes, why? If not, why not? How does your institutional identity affect the partnerships your institution is involved in? These are some of the questions that you can explore further. And of course, in the context of the training workshop, it is important that we look at the implications of all of this for partnerships practice. So I'd like to go back to the beginning where I briefly touched on the challenging nature of North-South partnerships and the imbalances and inequalities, particularly when it comes to knowledge, resources, and power. And so I would like to invite you to reflect and ask yourself these questions. Where is your institution positioned in this context along the North-South partnerships paradigm? Is your institution privileged? What implications does this have for your institutional and personal partnerships practices? Does your institution exert power and control in partnerships, or is it on the receiving end of partnerships? What can you do about it? Do you think that tackling issues of identity and privilege can be a stepping stone towards more balanced, mutually beneficial global academic partnerships? I do. And I hope that you will find the approach presented here in this learning bite useful, and that it will inspire you to keep reflecting on these issues on your own, with your colleagues, and with your partners.